Hi everyone, my name is Priyanka Kumari, co-founder of C Produce. We launched Kitchen Sensei application to reduce produce waste at home. Using our application, you can just take a picture of your produce and our C Produce AI will predict its expiry date and also remind you to consume before it gets expired. Thank you.
Project Green Fork is reducing food waste across Memphis with over 150 food businesses in our network, including the historic Peabody Hotel, the world-famous Charlie Virgo's Rendezvous, and the home of the Memphis Grizzlies, the FedEx Forum. You'll find us everywhere from the Shell to the zoo to the school lunchroom. Join the movement.
Hey Refed team, I'm Dee.
And I'm Julia.
And we're from the Drexel Food Lab. We are approaching year 2 out of 3 of our household food waste reduction and minimization study that is sponsored by the EPA.
We have also just finished filming our first episode of our Drexel Food Waste Challenge.
And finally, we're excited to be able to continue to share food waste reduction, minimization on all of our socials.
And all of these efforts connect to our mission to
do good, feed well, and to keep going.
Hi, I'm Dana Williams with Feeding San Diego. And this past year, we launched Hunger Action Heroes Unite and an accompanying curriculum, a comic book to help teach kids about the impact of hunger and food waste and how they can become a Hunger Action Hero too.
I am a Hunger Action Hero!
Hello, my name is Michael Jones, Senior International Partnerships Manager at RAP. This year, and for the first time ever, the Food Pack Network came together in person to share, learn, and align on how we can tackle the global issue of food loss and waste, with representatives from the US, Mexico, Brazil, Indonesia, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, the Netherlands, and the UK. It marked the start of a deeper cross-border collaboration to scale solutions and drive the systemic change our food systems need.
Hi, my name is Adrienne Hamilton, Marketing Manager for Carrot, a food donation and rescue software making it simple for businesses to donate food and goods to local nonprofits all across the U.S. And we're excited to announce that we reached a huge milestone this year of 130 million pounds of food rescued since our national launch in 2023.
At SECEPN in Ecuador, over the past 4 years, we have collected more than 5,700 kilos of food waste as part of our local food bank. This year, we are launching open houses based on food loss and waste with our 4,000 English students.
In Ecuador, we reduce food loss and waste.
Hello, my name is Marie Mourad and I work as an independent consultant specialized in food waste. I spent the last year in France when I helped launch a national initiatives against food waste at the Parliament. I'm very excited to bring back ideas to the US on how to adopt ambitious policies on food redistribution and prevention. For example, how to improve the quality of school lunches to reduce waste.
Hey Refed, I'm Lourdes, co-founder and CEO of Need Tech, a female-founded tech startup helping food rescue orgs grow their impact. We love working with our partners like Metro Food Rescue in the city of Phoenix. This year, we won the South by Southwest Ag and Food Tech Pitch Award. Big thanks to our incredible partners. We're proud to support the work that you do.
I'm Erin McCluskey, Food Systems Program Lead for RAP in the Americas. This year, we launched RAP's first U.S. behavior change campaign to reduce household food waste. Building on years of knowledge and experience overseas, Camp Waste Not is being delivered in partnership with Sprouts, the City of Denver, Denver Public Schools, and We Don't Waste, a nonprofit working to reduce hunger and food waste. Together, we're working to help residents of Denver waste less food and save more money through practical, easy interventions geared at giving those still delicious foods in our homes a second chance.
All right. Well, I know some people are still funneling in. I have to say those videos are really impactful for me. They're incredible. And I think just echo what Dana and what the summit is all about, which is action and really being action-oriented. Again, it's great to connect, but what are we doing? What is that first step? And actually, Refed is kind of leaning into that and launching the Food Waste Action Network. You guys are going to see a QR code up here on the screen. Anyone can join this network. All you have to do is scan that code and submit what action are you taking to tackle food waste. If you do, you could win a chance to have 2 tickets to the 2026 Refed Conference, which is really cool. So I think that's an easy one to not pass up and something you should absolutely join. For our next session here, I'm really excited about this. I'm kind of a future-looking guy, and you can't look at the future without looking at the trends, what's in front of you, and where the ball is moving. And you can read reports, and you can kind of go down every article there is online, but until you really listen to an expert, someone who thinks this and breathes kind of their perspective, you don't kind of get that unbelievable deep dive that someone with that experience brings to the table. So for this next session, we're going to talk about trends, and we're going to kind of talk about 4 sectors of trends. So we're going to start with diets, which I'm thrilled about. We're going to do consumer trends. I think that's going to be so fascinating and just kind of where it's all moving there. Climate and business will be third, and then followed up by AI across all food waste systems. So it's going to be great. So each speaker is going to have 10 minutes. I'm going to be very diligent about the clock, and I'm going to come grab the speaker after 10 minutes, so they got to keep it all pretty tight. But we're going to start with diets. Our first speaker is Erin Kappelhof. She's the CEO of Eat Well Global, a strategy and communication agency for the food and health industry. So give it up for Erin.
All right. Thank you for that intro, Joel. And as you heard, I work with the food industry. So Eat Well Global works really closely with the food industry. And you've probably also heard there's a lot going on when it comes to food and health and nutrition in the food industry. So much of this has to do with the current administration and the MAHA movement and all of that, what that entails. But some of it also just has to do with consumer preferences. So what are food organizations and food companies to do with all this information? Well, I hope to answer a few of those questions today, starting with a few critical forces that we're seeing that are shaping consumers' dietary decisions. So we're going to start with the rise of the conscious consumer. We'll talk about the evolution of meal occasions, really influenced by the use of GLP-1 medications, which Dana referenced this morning. And then we will get into this misinformation age that we're living in right now. And each of these forces really does affect the way people make decisions around food and nutrition. But collectively, they also underscore something really important. They underscore the critical need for all of us, but especially the food industry, to start looking at these issues in an interconnected way. Sustainability and human health, they're interconnected, and the solutions are really interdependent. We can all make a lot more progress on our sustainability goals if we think about nutrition and bringing it to the forefront. So as a nutritionist and dietitian, it's truly music to my ears to hear all of this hoopla and concern and interest in health and nutrition. It's something I've honestly not experienced in my 20-plus year career. So there's a lot happening in food nutrition. People are really interested. How many of you are using the Yuka app? That's something that's gotten really popular. People are looking for information about how food is processed, what's the ingredients that are in the food. People are searching for information and solutions at a totally new scale. So what we're seeing is the rise of the conscious consumer. In some of our recent research, which I'll be speaking at a webinar on Thursday if you're interested, we surveyed 3,000 American consumers, and we found that nearly 80% of them, 78%, have said that they're making health and nutrition a priority in their food purchasing decisions. And that's up from about 50% just a few years ago. So there's definitely a shift happening. And beyond avoidance of specific ingredients, people are looking for nutrient density to help them meet their health and wellness goals. They're concerned about what is the environmental impact of the foods that they're choosing. And they're saying that they are already starting to change their habits, how they make decisions about, what and how they purchase foods. In addition to some of these consumer trends, we know that there is climate change, there is food insecurity, there are chronic diseases like diabetes and obesity that are really reshaping the food landscape. 13% of US households, or the population, so 18 million US households are not able to afford a healthy diet. And 1 in 5 adults still has obesity or overweight. And this is a growing global problem. It's not just in the United States, it's a global problem, and it's something that especially the food industry can look to as an opportunity to really start to think about it, not just as something nice to have on the side, but really business critical, because it's better for the bottom line, and it's something that they can really do to make progress on their health and sustainability goals. So the second trend we're going to talk about that's reshaping consumer diets has to do with how we eat. And it's really driven by changing habits around snacking and meal size. So according to a survey that came out last year by IFIC, the International Food Information Council, over half of American consumers are replacing traditional meals with snacking or by eating smaller meals. This is where the girl dinner comes in. Anybody going into girl dinner? That's a real thing, that's happening. So one of the big drivers of this trend is the rising use of the GLP-1 medications that we spoke about earlier this morning, like Ozempic or Wegovy. So this class of drugs, which was initially created to treat diabetes, has become enormously popular. It's one of the ways it works is by helping reduce appetite. So people are eating less, and they're really finding significant weight loss. So it's really making a pretty big impact. Some estimates show that nearly or possibly 30 million Americans will be using these drugs by the year 2030. I heard a stat this morning that it was could be up to 50 million. So it's really, as the drugs become more popular, they're becoming more accessible, they're becoming more affordable. People are being able to use them more and more, and it's really reshaping how people are eating and purchasing food. We've conducted a couple of pieces of research on this phenomenon. We've talked to consumers and we've talked to healthcare professionals, and we really wanted to ask them what's going on, what's working, what's not working when it comes to kind of your food choices, what you're looking for. And what we found is that this phenomenon, it goes beyond food. It affects the fashion industry, it affects the fitness industry. But when it comes to food, consumers are saying that they want more bang for their buck. And I'm not saying they want more food for their money. It's not that. They want every bite to count. They are looking for smaller portions. They're looking for higher protein. They're looking for more nutrient density for fewer calories. Many of these consumers now cook at home more often. They're avoiding fast food. They're avoiding grab-and-go meals. And as much as we love to hear that in the nutrition community, people are cooking at home, we also know that the social context hasn't really changed much. People need convenience. They need affordability, and they need it to taste good. It still has to be craveable. So what we're advising food service operators to do is really focus on the 3 Ps: portion control, protein, and plenty of water and fiber. So adopting menu options to really meet these needs with high quality, convenient foods with flexible portion sizes. We're not saying to shrink down everything, but really provide options for people. Give them flexibility in how much they order to avoid that food waste. It will reach this growing GLP-1 consumer group, but it will also reach this growing general group of that discerning, conscious consumer. The third and final trend I'll talk about is the misinformation age. So we are all inundated with conflicting messages around nutrition and health. They spread rapidly, and there are 2 kinds. There's misinformation, which is false information spread unintentionally. So think about your well-meaning aunt or your neighbor or your hairdresser who's telling you a story or telling you something about what they heard and what is true, XYZ. These are not intended to be harmful. But then there's also disinformation. Those are deliberate falsehoods made to mislead. Both are significantly eroding trust, and social media is really just amplifying this problem. The rumors are taking on really lives of their own. A UK report came out just a few weeks ago, which I loved, and it called this a nutrition misinformation crisis. And they identified 3 super spreaders of misinformation. I thought we retired that term, super spreader, but apparently not. It's still in play. So think about whether you recognize any of these folks. There's the doc, that's the person who leverages a perceived authority. There's the rebel. They're all about counterculture and anti-science, and the more controversial, the better. And then we have the hustler. That's the person who's kind of the self-proclaimed expert, personal anecdotes, quick fixes. They're usually selling something on the side, a supplement, a meal plan, coaching. Any of that sound familiar? It's really becoming a problem. And what is the food industry supposed to do? The trust is going down. People are increasingly skeptical about everything. So the food industry really needs to be transparent about more than ever before. Supply chain, ingredient safety, their policies, their ingredients, what do they stand for? What is their ambition? You can do this. It requires a little bit of doubling down on evidence-based communication, sharing messages through compelling and credible channels, and using voices that are based in credibility and science. So consistency and transparency is really key. So just to summarize and wrap things up, these converging trends here, the rise of the conscious consumer, evolving meal habits, and really due to these medications like GLP-1, and then this misinformation age really illustrates a tipping point. Individual consumer trends, that will change, but the thing that's going to remain the same is this broader demand for sustainable, healthy foods. That's here to stay. Food service operators in particular can play a role. We can all play a role. Every food company should have a sustainable nutrition strategy because these issues are interconnected and the solutions are interdependent. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was super fascinating. I love that. I'm kind of excited about the conscious consumer. I think that's really good for all of us. Thank you very much, Erin. By the way, I see a lot of people over here and a lot of open chairs over there, so feel free to shift on over there. The trend is heading over there. Speaking of trends, we're now going to talk about consumer trends, and we're going to welcome Shara Orem, who is the Senior Director of Community Engagement at Datassential, a global food and beverage intelligence platform. So give it up for Shara.
Thank you, Joel. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you're all ready for a little more data before we head into a reception. As Joel mentioned, I work for Datassential, which is a food and beverage intelligence platform. In case you're not familiar with us, we work with the largest food brands, manufacturers, as well as food service operators, distribution, everyone in the food service space, essentially, providing consumer trends, menu data, and benchmarking, sales intelligence, lots of really great stuff. But what I am here to talk to you all about today is a little bit about consumer eating habits. So where is the consumer eating these days? What are they most interested in? We'll also talk a little bit about health and sustainability. So we ask consumers every month, are they eating away from home? Are they eating at home? What percentage? So we're seeing, of the latest data, 27% of consumers are getting 27% of their meals away from home and 73% at home. Now, why is this important? It's important when we're thinking about food waste and strategies to understand how much consumers are dining out versus eating at home. We also see a slight trend increase in away from home. So the past few months, we've seen a little bit less than 23% of that number away from home, and that has been growing a little bit. We also are asking consumers on a monthly basis, are they considering eating out more often, less often, or just as often in the coming month? And you'll see, based on this trend line over the past several months, we're actually seeing an uptick in consumers eating out a little bit more, and then those saying just as often, that number is increasing, while those saying that they are going out less often is actually decreasing. Now, how are consumers getting this food away from home? It's no surprise, I'm sure, to many of you in the room, a lot of this is happening where they're taking it to go or they're getting delivery. Now, we're always curious, how does this change based on the demographics of the individual? So we break down so much of information based on different generational differences. You'll see that across the board, drive-through is important for every generation. However, delivery is more focused on those younger demographics. So Gen Z and millennials are getting delivery on a regular basis, whereas folks that are in the Gen X and boomer populations are much more likely to drive, go to that restaurant, and actually get their takeout. Now, why is this important? The younger generation is not only doing this occasionally, at least once a week. Over half of Gen Z and millennials generally are ordering delivery. They're ordering pickup. And just a small anecdote for those of you that may not have Gen Zs in your household. I happen to, and my son, my 15-year-old, had a group of friends over for a sleepover a couple weeks ago, and I fed these boys dinner. There's plenty of snacks in the pantry. That evening, twice, they ordered delivery from a convenience store down the street from me. So pantry is stocked, the fridge is stocked, and yet they decided, let's get some DoorDash from 7-Eleven. I mean, I made sure they ate it all, so there was no food waste happening in the house that evening. However, it was just part of their daily routine. It's part of something that they are thinking about on a regular basis, and it's part of their habits. So just important to keep in mind that this generation, that's what they're thinking about. Now, the folks that are also keeping the value and cost in mind, that's of course incredibly important. We hear from some of the younger generation as well that they may order multiple meals. So I'm going to order delivery. I'm going to have my dinner delivered for tonight. I'm also going to order 2 more things that I'm planning to have for the next 2 nights. So spreading the cost of that delivery across multiple meal occasions. So what does this mean for food waste and sustainability? We recently conducted a study with consumers looking at their habits regarding sustainability and food waste. And over half of consumers told us that sustainability concerns affect their day-to-day food choices. Now, what kind of actions are they taking when they are trying to be more sustainable? The top of the list is they recycle as much as they can. What I found really interesting is that the second on the list, 54% of consumers, when they are trying to think about sustainable actions in their household, they're trying to reduce food waste as much as possible when they're cooking, so in their house, as well as when they're dining out. So I found that really encouraging. We also are seeing that restaurants are under a ton of pressures right now in the face of climate change. I didn't realize that was something I couldn't say on stage. But from cutting waste and carbon emissions to switching to electric kitchens, you know, sustainability is no longer a nice to have. It's really a business imperative across the industry. We also, when we're segmenting to the younger generation, those Gen Z consumers are really concerned about the climate change issues. So over 57% are saying that they are currently concerned and looking at ways that they can have an impact. We're seeing this happen at home with consumers that have young children. 83% of parents are telling us that they are making choices in their homes to not only practice, but also teach their children environmentally friendly habits. So these young folks that are growing up in these households, 83% of households are learning this in their day-to-day lives, and then will be going out to utilize these practices when they grow up. We also see that consumers want food brands to join in on the action. So almost half of consumers said that they think food and restaurant brands should take a stand on the issue of climate change. When we segment that by younger consumers, it is over half, so 55% of Gen Z and 51% of millennials in particular. And when we ask consumers about a number of different ways that brands could focus on sustainability, the one that rose to the top of the list was food waste. So 81% of consumers said they were more likely to visit places, restaurants, that donate excess food waste to charities. They had the option to say, it wouldn't affect my choice. They had the option to say, I would go less, but this rose to the top with 81% of consumers saying they were looking for those options. We also, as an organization, Datassential does consumer testing on restaurant chain menus that are new launches as well as limited time offers. And so I wanted to just show a few examples of how sustainability is showing up on those large menus. Now, this is still niche. Within the last year, there has been 6 mentions of sustainable or sustainability within chain restaurant menus that we track. But these are some of the top performers. So you see there are trending ingredients, but they are scoring very high with the general population. I want to call out in particular the citrus lime shrimp bowl is a general population score of 79. When we segmented that just by the Gen Z consumer, that actually jumped to 99. So the younger consumer is looking at those sustainable call-outs as well as different trending ingredients and seeing that as definitely a reason to go specifically to those restaurants for these items. We also asked consumers recently about their specific practices around food waste. It's been mentioned a few times, but we don't want to forget about the basics. Consumers are looking to the basics to reduce food waste at home, including leftovers as well as freezing food. But I do find that the boomer and the Gen X generation, those are the folks that are more familiar with these ways. In my family, my mother freezes everything before it goes bad, whereas my son is not quite of that mindset. So we have some more training to do with the younger generation. And then when we think about food service, so taking leftovers and modifying orders are some of the top ways that consumers are looking to reduce their food waste within the restaurant scenarios. And lastly, when we ask about the top motivator, this has been mentioned a few times on stage as well, but consumers were only able to select one top box. So what is the top motivator for why they are looking to reduce food waste and to save money? So keeping that financial concern top of mind is definitely something that should be part of your communication strategies as you're looking at ways to communicate with the consumer around food waste. There's a few challenges. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go through this very quickly. Cooking too much at home. I'm sure many of us don't remember what's in our fridge at home or don't always remember to check before we go to the grocery store. So these are the top challenges that many consumers are having as well. And then 80% of consumers agree that they want to see partnerships. They want to see restaurants and grocery stores all get on board with reducing their food waste. So our key takeaways today: restaurants are part of the routine, whether that is delivery, in restaurants, and it is continuing to grow, especially with that younger demographic. Consumers want brands to lead by example, so share your story. Think of how you can share with the consumers what you're doing with regards to sustainability and food waste, and don't forget to focus on the value and savings to the consumer directly. Thank you so much, and I'll hand it back over to Joel.
That was really awesome. Not surprising, teenage boys trending at 7-Eleven is still happening. For our next speaker, we're going to tackle climate and business. Julia Collins is a serial entrepreneur, sustainability leader, and champion for equitable innovation. She is the founder and CEO of Planet Forward, the leading sustainability and supply chain intelligence platform, helping global consumer brands reduce their climate impact. Please welcome Julia.
Let's just get this out of the way. Climate, 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 climate. Thank you, Joel, for that introduction. And I just have to say thank you to the ReFed team for curating one of the most thoughtful and frankly kind conferences that I've been at. I've just been blown away with how receptive and open everyone is here. And I think this summit every year really continues to raise the bar, not only on incredible thinking, but incredible action. And it feels so, so good to be here with you in Seattle. Before I get started, I want to do a little bit of a pulse check. I want to read the room and catch the vibes a little bit. So by a show of hands, how many of you are feeling in this moment like the pace of change, the pace of disruption, and the challenges within your business have accelerated over the last 12 months? Is anyone feeling that? I see a few. I see a lot. I see more. I see a majority. Yeah, I'm with you. I think we are all living in what feels a little bit like a pressure cooker. I actually thought about bringing my pressure cooker from San Francisco with me here as a prop, and then I realized that my friends at TSA might not appreciate that so much. So we can just visualize the pressure cooker together, right? You've got rising heat, you've got a tight lid, but inside you actually have some beautiful ingredients. And if you manage that pressure cooker correctly, instead of exploding, you could create a really beautiful and delicious meal. Forgive the food analogy, I just couldn't help myself. And that's the moment that we're in right now. We are in a time that feels like a pressure cooker, but I think the really good news for all of us is that if we stay the course, we're going to get to a future that's even better than the one that we imagined. Because precisely in these moments of extreme strain, do we find opportunities to lead and to really differentiate. It's not in the easy times that leaders are made. It's in the tough times. It's in the hard times. And we are in one of those right now. And so what I'd say, and I think Shara said this as well, that the companies that right now that double down on impact are the ones that are going to see outsized returns, because climate action is not just a nice to have, it really is a business imperative in this moment. So let's talk a little bit more about this pressure cooker. What is making it so intense? You know, on an environmental level, we're seeing biodiversity loss, disrupting our ability to access key inputs. Climate migration is certainly reshaping labor markets and will continue to do so, and other macroeconomic forces are changing the labor landscape, even as we speak. We're seeing a tightening of capital markets across the board. Certainly a tightening in VC is being felt for companies who are building at the innovation stage. We're seeing more intensity around claims, and I think we heard a little bit of that from the prior speakers. There's really a high bar for companies that want to make claims, and there's an intense fear of greenwashing. And consumers are demanding more, thank goodness, including more transparency. Geopolitical tensions, tariffs are destabilizing trade, extreme weather is hammering supply chains in many places, and we're worried about water scarcity, all within this new reality that artificial intelligence is certainly creating energy demands the likes of which we've never seen before. So there's a lot happening. But the important takeaway here is not to depress all of you. It actually is to inspire everyone here, because I think we'd be in agreement to say that climate risk is now business risk. And when things move in the pocket, from the pocket of nice to have, it's a great place for leaders to be able to accelerate their impact. So we're facing economic headwinds, supply chain volatility, regulatory pressures, shifting in consumer demands. And yet within this complexity lies, I think, a really huge opportunity. And it is an opportunity for leadership. We're not powerless. We have tools. We have data. We have choices. And that is, frankly, why we do the work that we do in this room, including the work that we do at Planet Forward. So just to tell you a little bit about Planet Forward, we work specifically with brands and large organizations to help them move beyond kind of lagging metrics into real-time climate decision-making. And I'm going to share a couple of case studies to bring this to light, including a case study for one of our dear friends and customers who's here with us today from Compass Group. I think, you know, for years we lived in an era where ESG was about beautiful reports, storytelling, voluntary goals, and good intentions. And I think what we could all agree is that the era is coming to an end, if it isn't already over. We're living in a world now where data integrity really, really matters. It matters to regulators, it matters to investors, it matters to consumers. And everyone is demanding verifiable progress. No more hand-waving, no more party tricks. And so I'm going to share two real-world examples of organizations that are continuing to stay the course on sustainability and seeing outsized returns and outsized impact in doing so. The first is Compass Group, of course, the world's largest food service company. Working together, we mapped their emissions across 55,000 SKUs, across more than 300 suppliers. And by doing this work, we were able to create supplier-specific data that uncovered a 20% opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That is a huge number for a large company who's growing and working to decarbonize at the same time. This really allowed Compass to make more precise procurement decisions that are driving real impact. And this is what leadership looks like. This is what impact looks like at scale. I'll give another example of a CPG company. Many of us use Bragg. We use maybe their iconic apple cider vinegar, or for the fellow vegans in the house, we survive on their aminos. Bragg is a consumer wellness leader with deep, deep, deep sustainability values, but was feeling as though they had limited visibility into their supply chain emissions. And so they decided to double down on transparency, and we worked with them to analyze their full Scope 3 footprint, identify top drivers for emissions, and really target supplier actions like regenerative sourcing and optimizing transport. Again, this is an example of a company that is deciding to double down on high-quality data and double down on impact. And the result of this work was we identified a 15% opportunity to reduce emissions and also save costs. Clear, actionable, real, and timely. And as inspired as we might be by these organizations, these incredible brands and companies, I also do recognize that there's a temptation right now to pull back. And often as human beings in moments of strain, we want to contract, we want to go into our shells. That temptation is very, very real. When markets are tight and budgets are tight, it really can feel more prudent to pause than to lean forward. But I think what we have to do is challenge that instinct to contract. Because actually, what feels like short-term safety will or may ultimately weaken your market position in the longer term. And so companies that are staying the course today on sustainability are fortifying their supply chains against future shocks. They're building durable and not ephemeral consumer trust. They're staying ahead of evolving regulations, whether it's EUDR or CSRD or the alphabet and number soup of regulations. They're staying ahead and not getting caught on the back foot. And then really planting competitive seeds that will be very hard for companies who are lagging to duplicate in the future. Businesses more broadly tend to follow the same cycle. First, it's optional to change, then it's expected, and then it's a non-negotiable. Let's think about food safety. Food safety decades ago, food safety standards were optional and really adopted maybe by the highest quality companies. Then they were expected across major retailers, and now food safety is absolutely a non-negotiable, and companies can lose an incredible amount of market value overnight by not observing them. Think about digital payments. They were once a nice to have and then suggested, and now you'd be hard-pressed to find an organization that didn't implement digital payments into its strategy. Sustainability is just the same. We are very quickly moving into an area where sustainability is no longer optional or expected, but actually non-negotiable. And I might just close by saying that the time really is now, and the path really is forward. At Planet Forward, we believe that better data drives better decisions, and that sustainability isn't just about a reporting burden, it really is a growth engine. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I'm incredibly inspired by the leadership that's here today and how much everyone, including the folks that we saw in the film, are doing every day to make real, tangible progress. Together, we really can build a food system that looks like the kind of world that we're excited to live in, equitable, regenerative. And listen, I am here to help. Our organization, Planet Forward, is here to serve. So if any of you want to stay connected, please find me in the ReFed app or just message me. I'm Julia at Planet Forward. More than anything, I want to say thank you. It's an honor to be here with you today, and let's stay the course.
Yeah, I was one of those people raising my hand saying it feels like a pressure cooker, and I think a lot of us can relate to that. So Julia, that was super motivational. Thank you. And I love this idea of staying the course even in times where it's challenging and really tough. Our next speaker is going to address AI in food systems, which is obviously extremely timely. Ned Spang has a PhD, is Associate Professor of Food Science and Technology, Director of the Robert Mondavi Institute for Wine and Food Science, and Faculty Lead for the Food Loss and Waste Collaborative at the University of California, Davis. Please welcome Ned.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you, ReFed, for having me here today. It's great to be here. I was just at my college reunion last weekend, but ReFed feels like a professional reunion for food waste people, so nice to see all of you. I also accept the challenge as a professor to try to talk about what I'm going to talk about in 10 minutes. Bear with me. I'll do my best here. So let me just jump right in. I got a lot of ground to cover. So what I'm going to be talking about today is AI in the food system. Specifically talking about how we're using AI in research. I'm going to start at the federal level and then zoom into UC Davis and talk about a few specific projects to give you an understanding of what we're actually doing on the ground. So all of our AI work that I'm going to talk about today is under this larger strategic plan. It's the National Artificial Intelligence Research Institutes program. And so this is a huge nationwide program. It's 6 agency funding partners involved in this effort. It's NSF, USDA, Department of Homeland Security, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the Research and Engineering Program within the Department of Defense, and the Institute for Education Services. Along with these federal partners, we have 5 core industry funding partners, some of whom are here today: Google, Amazon, Intel, Accenture, and IBM. So this is a really massive program at the federal level. There have been over $500 million invested in this program, and so we can actually do some really interesting things with that level of investment. So far, that federal level of investment has held because I think AI falls into the bin that doesn't have the same thing as necessarily climate associated with it. So we can do some work on AI and continue to do so. So the program goals here are to do some really interesting things with AI, some use-inspired research, some applied research, with a broader understanding of how to make, to improve society, to improve our planet. And so within this broader spectrum of the AI institutes, we have specific goals for the institutes. We're looking at, trying to, I can't read this from here, I have to move over a little bit. Advance research in AI broadly. We want to have transformational AI-powered innovation. And we also want to grow a workforce. At the university system, we're constantly trying to deliver well-educated students that you can then hire and bring into industry or public service. And finally, we want to establish these nexus points where we're bringing together these different ideas all together and see where we find some overlaps. And I'll give an example of that later today. There are 27 AI institutes as part of this funding across the country, 5 of which are related to food. So they're highlighted on the map here. We love our acronyms in academia. We cannot get away from them. So we have AgAid. This is the AI Institute for Transforming Workforce and Decision Support led by Washington State University. AI Leaf. This is the AI Institute for Land, Economy, Agriculture, and Forestry led by the University of Minnesota. AIIRA. AI Institute for Resilient Agriculture led by Iowa State. And AI Farms, Future Agricultural Resilience, Management, and Sustainability, led by the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. And of course, we have the AI Institute for Next Generation Food Systems at UC Davis, which I'll be zooming into in my talk today. So what are we doing at APHIS? We lovingly call it APHIS. Well, we have some specific goals as part of APHIS. Specifically, we want to apply AI across the food supply chain. So where those other examples I gave of AI institutes looking at food, they're all actually agriculture focused. And of course, we need work in that area, but we're a bit unique in that we're looking across the entire food supply chain. A large goal requires a large team, and our network represents an ecosystem of over 100 plus academic and industry partners. The founding partners of this particular institute include UC Davis, UC Berkeley, UC A&R, which is a cross-cutting organization of the UC system that looks at agricultural and natural resources. And we have University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, as well as Cornell involved in this partnership. But you can see our other network partnerships are not just universities, they're industries spread across the US as well as in Europe. So when we think across the food supply chain, so if you're looking at the kind of the top right here. That's starting with actually plant breeding. So we're using some AI tools on the plant breeding side to increase the nutrient density of crops and to optimize their adaptation to climate change. At the cultivation stage, we are working to improve the yield forecasting and advanced precision application of nutrients and other chemicals on the field to maximize yield and minimize impact. At the harvesting stage, we are assessing the health of the crops and exploring the deployment of some robotic harvesting machines. In our particular case, we're looking at strawberries. At the processing stage, we've developed pathogen detection models. And so that can actually decrease food waste down the line. If some pathogens get put into the food system, get distributed, you might have to get rid of a lot more product than if you identify it much earlier on and can just get rid of a smaller portion of that food. And finally, at the consumption stage, we are exploring precision and personalized nutrition, as well as linking large data sets to develop a broader understanding of food-health interactions. Now, these are the goals of what we're trying to do across the food supply chain. How are we actually using AI tools in this space? So we're deploying different tools for different goals. We use a lot of large language models, or LLMs. These are the things that you guys are using as well, your ChatGPTs, et cetera. But we're also using machine vision, we're using machine learning, we're using digital twins, we're using rapid image detection, and we're using LLMs, again, to kind of synthesize databases to bring together a lot of knowledge that took legions of graduate students to pull together in the past. We can do these things a lot more quickly. And so I do want to focus a little bit, when I was talking before about that personalized nutrition piece, thinking about how we can link together our understanding of food and the compounds in foods to health outcomes. So one particular problem we want to think about is food and the nutritional dark matter. Now, this is a cool new term I learned myself on my own campus. The idea is that when we look at a nutritional label, it can already be hard to kind of understand everything that we're looking at in a nutritional label. That is only a small piece of the puzzle. So we've identified that there's over 26,000 chemicals or compounds in foods, not just the macronutrients that we're looking at in terms of proteins and carbohydrates, but many, many more compounds. And so we want to start synthesizing, pulling that data together so that we have a deeper understanding of this dark matter in food. And not only that, what's there, but what are its impacts? What are its impacts in food formulation? What are its impacts to your health as a consumer? The solution we're using for this is a tool called Food Atlas. You guys can actually look at this yourselves. It's at foodatlas.ai. It's a tool that we continue to build out, but it is an interface you can look at where you can look up all these different chemical compounds, and it links to sort of verified reports we've found on health or other chemical properties. So this is good for public health. We can understand how putting these food items out into the population is affecting health. We can use it for food formulation, as I mentioned before, and we can also use it for diet recommendations. So this is a really powerful nutritional tool that's looking at the compounds in foods in many, many more dimensions than we typically think about. The next project, this is actually my project, so I feel a lot more comfortable talking about this one. I'm pulling together the what's called the byproducts database. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking at crops in California, many of the top crops, and I really want to understand, how much of this material is available, what are the different types of materials, what's the biochemical composition of these materials. That ties into the food atlas I just showed you. I can leverage the data in that atlas to think about how we might extract some of those biochemical compounds for health outcomes. And then I want to get to some of the commercial value of this. So if I was to extract lycopene from tomato pumice, what's the market value for lycopene? How much does it cost to extract lycopene from tomato pumice? I want to put that tool into the hands of entrepreneurs and folks who can build business models around this new information. What this looks like and what I'm about to show you is probably unreadable, but it is a sense of how complicated this is. This is just processing tomatoes. So when we think about processing tomatoes, there's actually lots of different byproducts from farm to the processing gate. And we can actually map those out by how much of those materials are available. And in the lower left corner, you can, if you click on any of those yellow boxes, the yellow boxes are byproducts. The blue boxes are the actual products that come out of this. For processing tomatoes, the mass that goes into the processing plant that turns into a product is about 25%. The other 75% is byproduct. So what can we extract with that in terms of value? Just looking at tomato pumice in California, if we calculate all the economic value of the compounds in that material, it's about $3 billion. Now, that's not $3 billion free to get. You have to extract it. It's going to cost some money, but that's still an incredible amount of potential value that's locked away in something we're currently seeing as waste. So when we zoom out and think about this project overall, we've been working for 4 years, but I just want to give a shout out to higher ed and what we're able to do with investment for multiple levels, federal government, state, and industry. We're extremely productive. We want to train students. We want to publish papers. We want to create partnerships. We want to develop new ideas and innovation, and we're able to do that with investment, and that is something we're very proud of with artificial intelligence for next generation food systems at UC Davis. Thank you very much for listening to me. If you want more information, I know I zipped through a lot of that. You can track me down. My colleague Steve Brown is in the room. You can also go to our website, and we'd be happy to share more information with you. So thank you very much.
All right, we're gonna save Joel the trip up here, introduce ourselves. I'm so excited for this conversation, and I have to tell you all, when Kathleen agreed to come chat here, I was just thrilled because the goal of this conversation is to kind of keep it real about what's happening right now at the federal level and what it means for the food system. And there's really no one better I can think of to do that. Kathleen is currently the Kelly and Brian Sweetie, how do you pronounce that?
Sweetie as in sweetie pie.
Okay, thank you. Solved a mystery I've been wondering for a while. Sweetie Professor in the College of Global Futures and Executive Director of the Sweetie Center for Sustainable Food Systems at the Arizona State University. Before that, she has done so many things that we would take up half our time if I were to tell you all of them, but I will tell you that she was, among all of them, the former Deputy Secretary of USDA from 2009 to
2013. Some point.
There you go. So we invited Kathleen here today to just kind of help us make sense of what is happening at a deeper level than I did this morning.
You did a great job this morning. We'll see what I can add.
Okay, super. All right, so Kathleen, this has been a year with a lot of changes, a lot of headlines, and if you're not doing it full time, it's pretty hard to just kind of keep up with what's happening. So can you just start us off by boiling down? What are the main policy changes that people working in the food system need to know about?
Seems like such an easy question, but we're kind of in the middle of a dust storm and the dust hasn't settled yet. So here's my most recent example. Saturday, being the policy nerd that I am, I studied the Senate budget reconciliation bill because I had to do the next day a little video for the Chef Ann Foundation. I had it all down. I'm all ready for tomorrow to make that video. And as my head was about to hit the pillow, there was a New York Times story about the Senate parliamentarian making a decision that this bird rule, I could explain it over cocktails, was going to prohibit some of the SNAP cuts that the Senate was planning to put in the bill. So I can't keep up. And you've got some challenges. You have courts ruling on Trump administration policies, sometimes for, sometimes against, but it's a moving target. The big, beautiful bill, the budget reconciliation bill, is not done yet. We're hearing a lot about the president's budget proposal. Nina mentioned it this morning, and I was really heartened to hear there was some good language in the EPA part of the budget around food waste and loss. But it's just a proposal. It's a conversation starter. A lot of people consider the president's budget proposal dead on arrival. Doesn't matter what president when it comes to the Hill. If it were to be enacted as it's written, it would mean deep cuts for USDA. But we have to wait and see. And the appropriation process in Congress is just really getting underway. I think it was yesterday that maybe the House Appropriations finished up with their bill, but we still have to see what the House does on the floor and what the Senate does. So there's all this stuff that's making it really hard to know what's what. But I did make a little list of what I do know, and I thought I'd write it down so I wouldn't forget. All right, here we go. Where's my list? Okay, what do we know for certain? Well, Doge has created chaos, and a lot of my friends and former colleagues have lost their jobs in federal service. I hate looking at LinkedIn now because you see these really heartfelt, compelling stories from people who are leaving federal service, by choice or not by choice. We see that people are also having a cascade of job loss in the nonprofit sector. So that's just, it's just really horrible. We are depressed. I will get optimistic before the end, I promise. We are depressed that a really popular initiative from the Biden administration to spend $1 billion on purchasing local fruits and vegetables was halted. We know there's a purging of DEI across the federal space, although we can't be sure what and where is happening. For example, last week, USDA put out a press release that they were canceling another $145 million in DEI initiatives, but they only listed 3 examples, which didn't quite equal 3 million. So it's a mystery. And then there's a rollback, a retreat, if you will, on climate. And on, if you've set a trend, huh? Yeah. On international food aid and an effort to stop efforts on preventing further concentration in agriculture, although I don't think any administration has done a good job on that. And maybe the 2 biggest things are loss of farm workers. So the last time USDA did the measure that I'm aware of in 2022, nearly half of the farm workers that are involved in crop production are not here legally. And so with the ICE raids, mass deportations, I think all of the food system there is threatened. And then we know that there are big changes in store for SNAP. You know, we hear up to $300 billion may be cut out of the SNAP program across 10 years. That's how we do budgets at the federal level. It could be devastating, especially when you couple that with Medicaid cuts, so that it's a real weakening of the safety net for our needy families.
Yeah, and food prices going up along with that. Yeah, that's a lot. All right, so this isn't meant to be a trick question, but that's a lot of what has happened. Mm-hmm. There's also, as you said, been a bunch of waffling. So are there any headlines that we've seen where in the end the thing didn't actually happen?
Yeah, a lot. You know, it just... and
I
know you really
food,
want me to say...
We'll keep it in the food space at least. Narrow it down a little.
She's really poking me about fake news. I get it. I don't know. I could pick apart things, but I want to take this opportunity to make 2 points about federal grants. So I saw a lot of people in the area that I work in stopping work on federal grants before USDA said stop work on the federal grants. Now, some of it's very understandable because a lot of these grants are on a reimbursable basis, right? You do the work, and then you invoice USDA against the grant that you were given. And there's a risk that they won't pay. But that said, when they're looking to cut the budget, they look for things where the money hasn't been spent out and where people aren't in compliance with what they promised to do in the grant. So my advice is, if you are able to take the risk, go forward and keep on with your grants until the plug is pulled, if it ever is. Otherwise, you're just hurting yourself, hurting your cause. The other thing about federal grants is that they're still operating. There's still opportunities there to apply to. And I know how much work it is to write a grant to the federal government. Ugh, really. And it's really hard to get yourself up and ready to do it if there's no certainty it's going to be there. But as I tell my staff, the one sure way not to get a federal grant is to not apply for it.
Yeah, and I know I've seen, had partners tell us that their grants were frozen, then to be unfrozen, and I think navigating that has been a little bit tricky as well, but you're not hearing quite as much these days about more freezing to come in the same way as kind of in that initial flurry, I think. Yeah. You've said a little bit about the snap cuts that are likely to come. I mean, I would say it's near guaranteed that there will be a big cut. It's a question of how much. Are there other fundamental big changes built into either the appropriations bill or other things that we're seeing coming down the pike that people should know about?
Well, I think that nutrition assistance beyond SNAP is going to be challenged. It is, around 70% of USDA's budget. So on any given year, it could be up to 80%, particularly because SNAP is counter-cyclical. So I think we'll see harm to WIC. We'll see, even though that's been it's almost as bipartisan as food loss and waste, but I think we will see some damage to WIC. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to look into a crystal ball right now. I want to wait and see, when things are really done, and then speak to it.
Yeah, hear, hear. So last year, many of you were here, and we were so excited to have then Secretary Vilsack here over the moon as he launched the national strategy to reduce food loss and waste and reduce organics, or something very roll off the tongue like that. And it felt like this pinnacle moment. And I have to say, I've been kind of sitting here wondering, what happens to a strategy like that when an administration changes and kind of is maybe not the author of it? How should we be thinking about that strategy now? Is it still in play? What? Give it to us straight here.
So I actually reread the strategy yesterday, and I'm really impressed by it. It's comprehensive, it's expansive, a lot of it's very doable. It's a really exciting document. So for all the people in the room that contributed ideas and energy to that, well done, congratulations. And I think it does matter. But now I'm going to unravel a little bit and tell you how I'm thinking about it. That document doesn't see the light of day in this administration, and it's not having to do with anything around food loss and waste. Every administration wants to have their own initiatives. They want to put their name to it. That's my initiative, my agenda item, I take credit for it. Heck, even if we had Kamala Harris president of the United States, I'm not sure that document would have been embraced. It's just, that's how the political beast works. And when I'm looking at doing something on Capitol Hill, for example, I always say, let's take this issue and divide up little pieces of it and give it to different House members so they can own it. Because we know they have to face the voting booth every 2 years, and they want to have their name on something. So I don't think it's so important that that document isn't, on every policymaker's desk. It really reminded me of the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative that I led during the Obama administration, which was to advance local and regional food systems. And when it was the last few days of Obama, people were constantly calling me and asking me, Kathleen, how do we embed Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative into USDA proper? Should we give it an office, maybe at the Agricultural Marketing Service? How do we ensure its legacy? And probably was not the person they wanted to hear from. I just chuckled because I said it's never going to happen. That was our team. That was the Obama thing. But if we did our job well, and I think history has shown that we did, we would have changed hearts and minds. We changed the culture around local and regional food systems. So I think by coming up with that national strategy, you did change hearts and minds. You have a lot of career employees that are going to stay the course at the federal agencies, at USDA, at EPA, at FDA, and they were involved in that. And so I think the way forward is pick out pieces of it. It's not, this is the Tom Vilsack announced strategy, right? That's a killer. With all respect to my old boss, I'm just saying politically that's a killer. You just want to figure out which things are really ripe to advance. Let this new administration get some wins. You know, some of the things in that strategy require new monies, acts of Congress, some don't. I mean, when I think of what's doable with California's move on date labeling, and with the administration putting out some rulemaking potentially there, I think now's the time to just really push that one on through. I think that could be a big win for this administration. It's been languishing over a number of years. They can own it, they can wear the t-shirt, you know, and then they're food waste and lost champions. That's really important.
I'm just wondering which t-shirt they would wear. Would it say Best Buy, Enjoy Buy, Sell Buy? Yeah, that's interesting. So it makes me a little sad to hear you say that, like, there's nothing you can do to make something last past an administration. But but I hear you on kind of like, we kind of need to dissect and figure out what of the many, many things in that strategy, none of which were, it wasn't just because the strategy came out, not all of them are going to happen anyways, right away, right? But like, what are the pieces that are most doable now, right? And like for the current time. So I'm curious, like, when you look both either at the strategy or just particularly USDA, because you know it so well, we'll count other agencies in there if you want. Like, what do you think are the, beyond date labels, and I'm so excited to hear you say that because it's something I've been wanting to see for over a decade now. But I'm just curious, like, what are the other steps that you think are like pragmatic, you know, feasible for now at USDA or the other agencies?
Yeah, I will say again, date labeling, big bipartisanship effort. I once went to a dinner party and I had Shelley Pingree, the liberal Democrat from Maine, on one side of me, and Mike Conaway, the conservative Democrat from Texas, now retired, on the right of me, and I thought, this is going to be a miserable dinner. And actually, they started talking about date labeling, and it was a great moment. And I saw this as an issue that could not only make its way across the finish line, but also a conversation starter for bipartisanship more broadly. So I really want to urge people to get behind that even in a bigger way now. What else could you do? Well, USDA is the largest purchaser of food. You know, makes Walmart and Target and all the others seem small, Compass Group. And so I think there's a lot that can be done around food procurement that covers a lot of different agencies. They have to get involved. There's all kinds of things. I mean, I'm reading in your list, and you're even talking about the Farm Service Agency, the Storage Loan Facility Program. And I mean, you have it all there. So it's like, what is it that we can do that are, they may not be the biggest thing, but they're small wins. They're building blocks to other things that may be more difficult. When the first Trump administration came in, and I'd been working on Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food kind of stuff forever, and had this big conference set up, I immediately pivoted and invited as the main speaker, the best friend of the guy who had been nominated to be Secretary of Agriculture. Did a great job. He was the director of the Department of Agriculture in Georgia. You got to pivot with the times. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing dishonorable with that. It's just the way we do things in DC.
Right. All right, well, I'm going to let you take your DC hat off if you'd like, or you can keep it on. But we have quite an amazing mix of people in this room, and it's one thing I love about this conference is what a diversity of like people and stakeholders, where everyone's coming from in so many different ways. We have food businesses, we have state governments, we have local governments, we have nonprofits, we have a lot of entrepreneurs and startups in the room. So what is your advice to people on like how they should be thinking about this moment? Like anything they should be doing, shouldn't be doing when it comes to food waste in particular?
Well, in your talk this morning, you really drove home the opportunities to bring the agenda to the State House, to the City Council, to the town meeting. I'm from New England, so it's not just the federal government.
Yep.
The videos that I've seen and enjoyed all day, how inspiring. Clearly people are in the nonprofit world, they're in the business world, there are all different kinds of leaders in this movement to celebrate, keep on. So that's always great. But then I'm gonna leave you with a tough thought, and that is we can't ignore what's going on in Washington. We can't say, that's not for us. I'm gonna refocus and just put that out of sight. I think it's important, and I'm gonna say, I don't agree with the advice that people always say, don't talk about politics on Thanksgiving. I think we have to. I think we have to talk about politics more and more and more.
And we are here right now, so that's good. Yeah, I think it is a really interesting moment. I'm curious, now you're at ASU, you're working on food system things. Have you guys been impacted directly by any of the funding cuts, or even like indirectly?
Sure, I've lost a couple of grants. One was USAID. My loss of a small part of a grant at the university is nothing to really cry about given what's going on around the world for people who have lost USAID funding. But yes, I lost that, and I lost another grant that had to do with the whispered word.
Got it. You bring up USAID, so I'm just curious, how do you see the dismantling of USAID affecting the U.S. food system? Of course, we know that it's had drastic effects around the world, but for, when you think about the U.S., like, does it?
Well, we have USA Foods that go around the world, so that has some impact, though I'd really like us to spend more of our dollars building up local food systems in those countries that we provide food aid to. I teach about food systems, and the big message about food systems is it's all interconnected. We have a course that we teach in the summer. It's American agriculture in the global context. We can't really put little black lines around their country and think it works that way. One of the things I do think is an opportunity in the food loss and waste area is composting, because the war in Ukraine, our derogatory discussions of Canada as the 51st state, the back and forth on tariffs really means that farmers are going to have more difficulties getting synthetic fertilizers. Well, we have a solution for that.
Yeah, it's a great
So,
point.
I think that's what you have to just constantly look at the landscape and again, to use my word, pivot. And you know, there will be wins for this community in this administration, even at the federal level. I'm confident of that. Don't let the Debbie Downers, you know, and perhaps you're going to say, she's a Debbie Downer. I hope not. But don't let that kind of attitude distract you from the day-to-day work. I mean, I have a hard time unplugging from CNN these days with what's going on around the world, but I'm not going to quit. Are you going to quit?
I am definitely not going to quit. I think my motivation has galvanized, I will say, in
These
general.
guys aren't going to quit.
You know.
And this is a pretty young crowd for an agricultural food conference. And so that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah. Well, great. I was going to ask you to give us a moment of hope to end, but you just gave us one. So I will just add, I mean, I think one of the things we hear kind of just from writ large the public, and when I read about it, is like there's a lot of interest in eating, partially because it's in people's control. And I think food is one of those things that we can always bring back to the individual and the people. And I think trying to use that ability to feel in control, not ourselves, but for everyone right now, I think gives us an interesting starting place to talk to people about food and what impacting the food system can accomplish. So I think we can do that at Thanksgiving. I think we can do it in our cities, and I think we can do it beyond that. So thank you, everyone, for being here, and I will thank you, Kathleen.
Sure.
So great to have you.
All right. I have the great pleasure of being the last speaker today on day one. How was everyone's day one? Can I get a little vibe check? Yeah, I mean, I've come to a couple of these. I've got to host one of them, like I said. And, you know, my biggest takeaway is that there's always a sense of optimism in this room with ReFed and the people that come and are tackling food waste. But growth hurts, period. You know, I was going through a moment of growth myself, and my therapist was like, do you think it felt good for your kid to learn how to walk? It hurts. They fall down, you know? When you grow, it's challenging, and we're in a growth phase right now. And I think, you know, ReFed's job is to paint a clear picture of what's happening, and sometimes you come here at this summit, and it's all great news, and it's just filled with optimism, and other times it's, you know, we talked about pressure cookers and dust storms, and we're all still here. We're all still standing, and we are filled with ideas, and we are not stopping. We're just beginning, and this is part of growth. We stick through it, through the thick and the thin. So give it up for ReFed and all of you in this room. I have a couple of just announcements. Happy Hour is taking place on the 7th floor, so if you're interested in a little bit more chatting, some schmoozing, I'm sure there'll be some snacks. That's great. If you want to continue the conversation over a great meal, there's these no-host dinners, which you can sign up for at the registration desk. We're back tomorrow morning. Breakfast is at 8 a.m., so it's going to be right out here where it was this morning. And at 9 a.m., we're going to be right here on the stage talking about Washington State and Seattle, what we're doing here locally. I'm going to be leading that. It was so nice meeting you guys. I got just so moved by watching circles of people talking. I heard strangers introducing themselves. This is what it's all about here at ReFed. You guys are amazing. We will see you on day 2. Take care, everybody.